evening and welcome to Hustle.Play.Love. I'm Shawn Taylor. Thank you so much for joining me. On this show, the love segments cover relationships, things, and places. For tonight's love double feature, I want to talk about losing something we love, our hair, due to a disease known as alopecia. 2% of the global population will experience alopecia at some point in their lifetime. That's an estimated 6.7 million people in the United States and 160 million worldwide. The term broadly means hair loss, but the disease itself can manifest in different ways. There are numerous forms of alopecia that require different treatments, and results may vary depending on the type you have and at what stage you're at. I suffer from it and have received treatment, but what works for one person may not work for another. There are so many products on the market that claim to reverse hair loss. How do you know what to choose? And while wearing wigs or shaving your head are valid options, I want fellow sufferers to know there are treatment therapies that can and do work. And one of them just might work for you. I've invited Dr. Brooke Jackson to shed some light on this disease and how to treat it. She is a board-certified dermatologist, dermatologic surgeon, and healthy skin advocate, and the owner of Skin Wellness Dermatology in Durham, North Carolina. Dr. Jackson, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have this conversation. As I mentioned, I've been on this journey for a very, very long time, and it's known, it's widely known, but I still think there's not enough known about the disease. So what causes alopecia? I know a lot of people say it runs in the family. Is that true too?
It can, and as you mentioned in your introduction, alopecia means hair loss. And there are many, many different types of alopecia. And depending on the type that you have, that will determine the progress and the process and the treatment plan. And so, my analogy often to my patients is if you go to a parking lot, there are many different types of cars and they all perform differently. So, in order to figure out what your treatment is, first and foremost with alopecia, it is crucial to get a diagnosis. So when somebody says, I have alopecia, that's not enough information for me. I need to
Mm-hmm.
know what type, and that way we can figure out how to best treat it.
So is any type of hair thinning considered alopecia?
Yes.
Okay.
So often patients will say, I have hair loss. And, when I bring them in for their visit, we talk a little bit more about that. Was it sudden? Was there any itching, redness, bumps, tenderness? Did it come out in clumps? Did you have cycles of it where it went away and came back? Was it after a particularly stressful event like a childbirth or a death in the family? Was
Mm-hmm.
it due to a medication? And so all of these things play a role. I also like to know about the patient's hair care practice. What products are you using? Have you been using weaves or chemical perms? What do you do at home? How often do you wash your hair? Have you ever, it goes on and on and on. And so often when I have a new patient for alopecia, that is at least a 30 to 45-minute conversation because I want
Oh,
all the
okay.
information. And that is really the only way to gather the information, the history. I also want to check your labs. I want to talk about your nutrition. We're seeing
Mm.
a lot of people now who are complaining of hair loss who are on these GLP inhibitors for weight loss. They're having hair loss, right? If you have a
Oh.
thyroid problem, you may have
Mm-hmm.
hair loss. If you are iron deficient, you may have hair loss. And so there are many, many reasons why you may lose your hair. And the only way we're going to get it fixed or get some improvement is first starting with the diagnosis.
And just based on just what you just said, and I'm thinking about all the products on the market that claim to reverse hair loss. I mean, how can they make those claims and cover every type of alopecia for every type of reason that you just named?
Yeah, so there is a difference between, for example, a prescription product and an over the counter product. And a lot of that has to do with the FDA. So any product which is a prescription has to have met a level of status through the FDA. There has to have been a clinical trial, there has to be a claim, and the product has to meet the claim. For products that are over the counter, they don't necessarily have to meet a claim. And so you have to approach a lot of these online products, a lot of the over the counter products.
Mm-hmm.
Really, you have to kind of do your research and think about, is that really possible? If it's too good to be true, it likely is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so often when we're talking about a prescription treatment, a prescription topical, or an oral medication, it's a whole different ball game from those that are available over the counter or without a prescription.
Now, do those drugs actually do any harm?
They can. So,
Really? Okay.
I always talk to patients about risk benefit profile. So,
Mm-hmm.
everything that you put in your mouth, even if it's a Tylenol, right? You want your headache to go away, but you also don't want to cause liver damage. So, if you take too much Tylenol, that is what may happen, right? And so, you have to take the patient history, and that's why it's important, right? I need to know your medical history. What are your allergies? Do you have heart disease? Do you have liver disease? Is there something that's going on with you? What other medications do you take that might interact with what we're giving you? And so that is one of the reasons why what you receive as a treatment may not be the appropriate treatment for your cousin or your sister or your coworker.
Mm-hmm.
You may have a different diagnosis, you may have different baseline health status, you may have other things going on. God forbid you're getting chemotherapy for breast cancer. That's a whole different type of alopecia that you may have versus a type of hair loss that you might have after you had a major surgery or childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, it is so important to make the diagnosis first so that we can get you on the right path for treatment.
Now, you mentioned there's numerous types. How many different types are there?
Lots. Like chapters and chapters. When we go to our dermatology meetings, there are 2-hour long sessions about hair loss. And
Mm.
so, in general, the broad stroke, alopecia again means hair loss, but we typically divide it into two larger categories: scarring and non scarring.
Mm-hmm.
So, scarring implies that there has been some inflammatory process. Inflammation occurs around the hair follicle, and if you have long-term inflammation without treatment, that can potentially cause a scar around the hair follicle. So often, unfortunately, there's one particular type called cicatricial scarring alopecia that we see predominantly in African American women. And we now know that there's a gene that predisposes you to this type of alopecia. So you
Oh.
have the gene, but then the trigger for making this happen is often chronic chemical processing. So it's kind of
Mm.
a two-pronged process. The non-scarring types of alopecia, those are also many, many different types. So that can be stress related. We saw a lot of that during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
That can be post illness,
You
also a
couldn't
lot
buy
of,
Rogaine during the
yeah,
pandemic.
yeah,
It ran
yeah,
out. There was
yeah,
like 2 month back orders on
yes,
Rogaine. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And truth be told, it may not have been beneficial. So
Mm.
often when you have a stress related type of alopecia, once the stress settles down, it will resolve on its own. So
Okay.
sometimes there's a coincidental two things happening at the same time. And it's not necessarily that one thing was the treatment, it's just that it was going to wear itself off anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you have a nutritional deficiency, so if you are anemic, if you're vitamin D deficient, those are reasons that you might lose your hair. If you've just started a new high blood pressure medication, or new asthma medication, that might cause you to lose your hair. If you just had a divorce or a death in the family, that is definitely a reason for a stress related type of alopecia.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things when I'm talking to patients that, again, I think is really important to understand is your hair is not real time. So, what is on your head right now and what is going on with your hair, the health of your hair, is representative of your health status 3 months ago. So, hair often lags
Oh.
behind real time. And
Oh,
so,
that's
if somebody comes
interesting.
in, for example, and says, you know what, my hair is just really shedding, I'm getting handfuls and handfuls. I'm like, great. How long has that been going on? They're like, oh, maybe 3 months. I'm like, great. What was going on with you 6 months ago? And they're like, oh, I had surgery.
Mm.
Okay. Right. And so it is related to that stressor from surgery, or, my grandmother died, or my dog got run over, whatever it is that is a stressor for you. It is often, let's wait 3 months and then we're going to have the problem. And so I often counsel my patients too, if they share with me that there's something particularly stressful going on in their life. I'm like, all right, let's get ready for it. Right?
That's what I was going to ask. Can you get ahead of it? Can you get ahead of it because I know a lot of people don't even know that some of their medications might lead to hair loss. You mentioned some blood pressure medications, or if you're trying something new, they might not even know that it had anything to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so again, you really do need to take a good history. And I will tell patients, look, at the end of the day, we also have to prioritize. Right. So obviously, if you're on high blood pressure medication, that means you have high blood pressure and that needs to be treated.
Right.
Because if you go without treating it, that's going to be a whole other problem.
Yeah, you don't
and we
stop
won't
taking
even
your high
have to
blood
worry
pressure
about,
medicine. You
yeah,
have to
we
grow
won't have to
your
worry
hair.
about your hair because you won't be here.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to kind of put things in perspective. And, sometimes if that is the medication that appears to be causing hair loss, I will often check in with the cardiologist or the primary care doctor. Is there another option that will best control the high blood pressure? If the answer is no, that's it. I'm like, okay, then
Then
we're
you're
going to have
done.
to work with
Yeah.
it, right? We got to work with what we got.
I'm interested to find out from you, Dr. Jackson, when it's too late to get treated effectively. I hear a lot of people say that you don't want to wait until it's too late. What's too late?
It's never too late, right? To quote, one of the slogans that we had many years ago, if you see something, say something. And so I think far too often women will hide it. Sometimes hairstylists will hide it, not intentionally, but they don't necessarily want to say, oh, your hair is thinning, because sometimes hairstylists get blamed for what is not necessarily their fault. Right. And so if you notice, and I would actually engage your hairstylist, right? How is my hair looking? Is it feeling thin? I'm seeing a lot of stuff in my brush, right? And so it has to be a conversation, because men can't see the top of their head, right? So if you have some redness, some irritation, you may not notice it. You might notice your scalp is tender. You may notice a little hair loss, and that is the time to go and see a professional. And so as a dermatologist, I will say that we are experts in hair, skin, and nails, right? And so if you have a problem with your hair, skin, or nails, that's the doctor you want to go to.
You want to go
If you
to.
have a problem with your heart, you go to see a cardiologist. If you got a problem down there, you go see the gynecologist. Right?
Exactly.
And so we're specialists.
I have to ask, do the essential oils work? I mean, or the rosemary water or the rice water? You see all these, do they do anything?
Yes and no. So we know, and there was a study published not too long ago that rosemary oil is equivalent to about 2% minoxidil.
Oh,
Right?
not very much. Okay.
Yeah, but let's look at what's over the counter, right? So if you go to the drugstore and you buy Rogaine or minoxidil, which is the generic, that's 4%. Okay.
Okay,
So
that's close.
it's
Not bad.
yeah, it's a fine place to start, but not necessarily going to
Where you
get
want
you
to
where you
end
need to
up.
go.
So
Yeah.
you need a diagnosis, flat out. Go get a diagnosis. And I know you're not in the Chicago area, but people travel. So tell us how we can find out more about your practice. Where do we go?
Sure. Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Brooke Derm, and my website is skinwellnessdermatology.com. I used to live in Chicago. I did for 10 years. I miss it
Awesome.
terribly, and I'm thinking about reactivating my license so that I can at least do some telemedicine.
Come on back. Come on back here.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot. I've learned so much from this conversation. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Be well. We'll be right back. Welcome back to part 2 of tonight's Love segment, examining the disease alopecia and what you can do about it. Now, I suffer from androgenetic alopecia, which is driven by hormonal changes in pre, present, and postmenopause. I remember the panic I felt the day I turned around in the mirror and held up a hand mirror to style the back of my hair, and I noticed a balding spot like right here. And I'm so grateful that a friend urged me to seek professional help before it was too late. And thank goodness I did. My journey started in 2019, and though I've gotten results, it continues. I think it's important to share our experiences with other people who are going through it. So I've invited a friend, a really good friend of mine, who's also looking for answers. Deborah Douglas is an award-winning journalist, educator, and the author of the book, U.S. Civil Rights Trail, A Traveler's Guide to the People, Places, and Events That Made the Movement. She is the founding co-editor-in-chief of The Emancipator, a digital publication that reimagines the first abolitionist newspapers in the United States, and she is currently director of the Midwest Solutions Journalism Hub and a faculty member at Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism. You got a lot going on.
I do.
You got a lot going on. So, we were talking about alopecia and what that journey's been like, and so when did you first notice hair thinning? Because you see you sitting here with these beautiful dreadlocks, you go, she has alopecia?
Yeah, exactly. And I can't tell you the kind that I have like you can because I'm too traumatized. So I don't even want to know the name of it because I just want it to go away.
Now, you heard what Dr. Brooks said. You're supposed to get a diagnosis first.
Yes, I have it. I know what I need to do. I know why I have it. And that was the journey for me. Why am I losing my hair? Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to tell you where I'm losing it either, again, because I'm vain. But I was going to a really great dermatologist. Actually, I used to see Brooke in the early 2000s when she lived in Chicago.
How about it?
Yes.
She's on her way back. We got to get Dr. Jackson back in Chicago.
Exactly, at least for a visit. But I have a really great dermatologist now, Colette Honore in Hyde Park. And so she was helping me solve the puzzle and asked all kinds of questions. And then I happened to get a new job, a temporary job in Central Indiana, where I was a visiting professor. So, all of my insurance moved to a different state. And so I picked up from where I left off with Colette, with a new doctor in Indiana. And I started getting shots when I was going through that process there.
Now, what do you mean by the shots?
So they would give me shots in my head, a steroid shot.
Oh, that's that PRP?
Well, it wasn't the PRP.
Okay, that's different.
Yes, a different one. PRP is way more potent. This was a steroid shot to stimulate growth. And I got a series of them, and I didn't get results. So,
like how far apart were they spaced?
Over the course of a year, like every 4 months or so.
Okay.
And so I ended up back in Chicago. So I hooked back up with my beloved dermatologist here in Chicago, who helps me with so many things. Mm-hmm. And we started asking questions again. And so she's just really on it. And she was so committed to finding out an answer, not like in that sort of doctorly kind of way, like, okay, yeah, what does the book say? But like really caring, like I'm stressed out about this.
Well, it is very stressful.
And she's like, I feel your stress, girl. So she started asking really deep questions and running some tests. And then I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. She didn't diagnose me. She got some results. And she said, I think you need to see another specialist. So she walked me through that process. So
that affected your hair loss as well?
Yeah, so it's inflammation. So that's sort of like an underlying factor with a lot of autoimmune disorders. And so it's choking off my follicles. Like, hands off my follicles, free the follicles.
Yeah, because one thing we didn't get a chance to cover with Dr. Jackson that she had shared with me is that once your hair follicle dies, it's over. Never coming back.
It's never coming back.
Yeah.
So that's why I was chasing these follicles with these shots. But I was glad to get the other diagnosis because at least I had an answer to that and some other things that I was ignoring because we both work hard. And we work hard and play hard. So I'm like, okay, if I'm feeling a little bit sluggish or something like that, then I just need to suck it up and, and get my energy up, get my will and keep pressing through. But like, no, sometimes it's actually like a real thing.
Yeah, and I think we do the same thing with our hair. I don't know why we think we can solve it, but then there's so many things that are put in your face.
Yeah.
You see these Facebook videos with sisters, with hair down to here, and they're using some oil and they're massaging it through, and I got so sick of seeing those videos after a while, because I'm like, this isn't a solution for everybody, and I've bought the concoctions, and that's why I asked her about the essential oils. I don't think those are
solutions at all, to be honest.
I mean, the thing is, maybe you just needed some moisture.
Blue Magic will grow your hair, like from back in the 70s. Like every decade, it's a new thing.
And Blue Magic did not grow our hair, right?
No,
Blue Magic probably killed some follicles. Right. but I had a bunch of essential oils in my house. I got, I'm mixing them up and I'm putting them on, and my hair is all greasy and everything. Well, at least some of them might work. She mentioned rosemary oil.
Yeah, I heard that.
Has some minoxidil in it, 2% minoxidil. Honestly, when I first found out about it, so I went to a naturopathic doctor. I didn't go to a dermatologist right away. Okay. She told me about the essential oil, so I was trying that. I think it was helping, somewhat. But it wasn't until I went to a dermatologist, and I actually went for a skin issue.
Right.
And while I was there, I was like, you know what? Look at my scalp.
Exactly.
And he knew what it was right away.
That's great.
And so then he put me on with the dermatologist at the practice that really dealt with alopecia, Dr. Smita Agarwal, and love Smita. And she put me on just topical minoxidil for a while.
Yes.
And I was like, really? Rogaine?
Yes.
That's all I need is Rogaine?
Yeah.
It seemed, implausible, but I did it. I started to notice some results, but then it also seemed like it was kind of breaking my hair off. You can't get that stuff on your hair. It needs to go on your scalp.
Right.
So I got the PRP treatment. So
Great.
The PRP, for those who don't know, the PRP is when they take your blood and they shake it up in a machine somewhere, and they come back and they shoot the platelets back into your scalp.
Exactly, yes.
And is it painful? Yes. It is absolutely very painful.
I've seen many demonstrations because I've done a lot of research.
It's like 15 shots. And,
yes.
That second treatment, I was like, I asked the doctor, I said, girl, I got to put some Janet Jackson on or something to take the pain away. Janet, take me away for a minute.
Exactly, yes.
But, and the thing is, the results, they're not right away.
Right.
So, that's the thing. It's patience. It's an exercise in patience.
A lot of women are actually getting hair transplants too. And
really?
I've gone down the rabbit hole. So I've researched every place to get transplants in this city, in this country, and in the world. And so I talked to my dermatologist about going to Turkey to get hair transplants because it's much cheaper, but also a lot of those doctors there specialize in black hair. And so I've seen lots of demonstrations and I've seen lots of results. And my dermatologist was like, I normally would not condone medical tourism like this, but she's like, she had a case of a patient who did something similar, and she's like, she's supporting me in that decision if I choose to go do that. The only thing is, I don't have anybody to go with me. I kind of feel like if I go get a procedure like that in a foreign country, I need a friend to be with me.
It's in Turkey?
It's in Turkey. Istanbul stays open till 1 p.m. 1 a.m.
Okay. But that's expensive. You got to get over there, and then the treatment.
I costed it out. This is just the cost of a good vacation.
Okay, the cost of a good vacation to get your hair back, it's worth that.
And they give you concierge service. So they pick you up, put you in a nice place, take you to the doctor, get you. It's like, I'm ready to go.
So how long have you been on the journey? I'm just interested.
Oh, it's hard to know because I don't know. I'm going to say like maybe 7 years or maybe 8 years.
Okay.
Because I started noticing things, and then I was asking different questions for different things, and then I had to put the puzzle together. What I'm realizing now is that now there's a lot of conversation around inflammation among women.
Right.
And so I don't think that society does a really good job of explaining to us, people don't understand black hair. I know everybody can experience alopecia of every race,
right,
but
absolutely.
There's not a lot of medical support for understanding black hair on a day-to-day basis. It's the wisdom of women mostly passed down from generation to generation, which can take you far, but not all the way.
Right.
And then some of the internal things that happen as you get older, there's not a lot of information about that. You kind of have to figure it out.
She mentioned menopause can be a cause of it, and there's not a lot of support for that. And
nobody tells you what to expect. We know what to expect when you're 10 or 11, when they start bringing in the nurse from the health department to school, and they tell you what to expect in that phase of life. and how to take care of yourself. But there's no gym assembly for, women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, or whatever to explain to us what happens at different stages. So
that's why we end up watching TikTok videos and buying a bunch of, stuff that doesn't work for our hair.
Yeah.
So, I know a lot of women are starting to shave their heads, and some of them look absolutely gorgeous. One of my best friends, she can wear that hair.
Some people
I can't see it
I
in my
can't do
head.
it. I can't take that.
Yeah. So I just wasn't ready to take that step. One thing Dr. Jackson shared with me is that I said, do people maybe take that step before they really have tried everything? She goes, yeah, a lot of them do, because they just get so frustrated with seeing, the patchy hair, and they assume maybe that there's nothing that they can do about it. And I didn't know if there was anything I could do about it, but I gave it a shot, and it took a while. But even this time last year, my hair growth, I give all the credit to the PRP and the minoxidil.
That's great.
But that worked for me. It might not work for other people. So I really want to stress that, get a diagnosis. So you said you haven't got no diagnosis?
Well, I just haven't memorized what kind of alopecia it is.
Oh yeah, I know. I had to ask my doctor yesterday, can you write it down?
I'm just like, okay, let's get to the next thing. But I have lots of documentation, so I'm good with that. Mm-hmm. I've also tried this hair helmet. It's an infrared helmet that you can order. Yes. And I'm a journalist, so I've written a lot about black hair, and I've even written about perms for international publications. So I actually did the research. And so what I found out, like Brooke mentioned, the FDA covers some things and not other things. And some of the things you buy over the counter, they don't necessarily cover.
So yeah, I think that's important to note. If we don't learn anything from tonight, I will say this: get a diagnosis and stop guessing your way through it. And
if you think it's a problem, then it is.
It is a problem, and know that there might be some other things that might be contributing to it. So
absolutely.
Good luck on your hair journey. Good luck in Turkey if you end up going over there.
All right, thank you. Come
with
me.
Thanks for joining me. I might come with you.
Okay.
All right, we'll be right back. Thanks for tuning in to the season finale of Hustle.Play.Love. That's right, we filmed 10 episodes already, and it's been a blast. And before we wrap, I want to thank you and all of the people who made it possible. My producer, Darius Hillman, makeup artist, Rebecca Ann, and the Can TV crew, Jason, Lewis, Lucas, Tasha, and Bianca. And of course, thanks to tonight's guests, Dr. Brooke Jackson and Deborah Douglas. You can rewatch the show on cantv.org or download the Can TV Plus app. Until then, stay on your hustle, play like you mean it, and love like there's no tomorrow. I'm Shawn Taylor. Until we meet again, good night.